There was a time when making $80,000 a year meant you had made it. Not billionaire rich, not mansion on a hill rich, but stable, comfortable, secure. It meant you could breathe. And yet, today, thousands of people earning $80,000, sometimes more, lie awake at night thinking, why does it still feel like I'm behind? You did what they said. You went to school, you built skills, you climbed, you negotiated, you hit the number. And somehow the relief never came. Not for long, because the number was never the finish line. It was a mirage. My name is Aiden, and in this video we're going to unpack why an $80,000 salary, once a symbol of success, now often feels like just enough to survive. Not because you're bad with money, not because you failed, but because you've been quietly pulled into something much bigger. A psychological trap. Let's rewind. Picture yourself at 22. You're staring at job listings that offer $42,000, maybe $50,000 if you're lucky. You look at rent, you look at groceries, you look at student loans. And then someone says, if you can just get to 80K, you'll be fine. It becomes a mental milestone, a lighthouse in the fog. Psychologists call this a reference point, a number your brain attaches to as safe. Once you hit it, everything should feel okay. And for a moment, it does. You get the offer letter, you see the direct deposit, you feel a surge of validation. Dopamine spikes. You've upgraded your life. But here's what nobody explains. The human brain is not built to feel satisfied for long. It's built to adapt. There's a psychological phenomenon called hedonic adaptation, the tendency for humans to quickly return to a baseline level of happiness no matter how positive the change. The first time you see an $80,000 salary, it feels life-changing. 6 months later, it feels normal. 1 year later, it feels insufficient. Not because the number shrank, but because your expectations expanded. This is where the illusion begins. When income rises, 3 invisible shifts happen almost automatically. Lifestyle inflation, social comparison, identity expansion. And they happen so quietly you don't even notice. Let's start with the first. You move into a better apartment. You upgrade your car. You start buying the better version of things. Not reckless spending, not luxury excess, just reasonable upgrades. You tell yourself, I worked hard for this. And you did. But here's the trick. Every upgrade resets your definition of normal. The $1,200 apartment becomes the bare minimum. The newer car becomes expected. The organic groceries become standard. Your fixed costs rise. And suddenly, $80,000 doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like maintenance. You're not building a future, you're sustaining a lifestyle. That's the first crack in the illusion. But the second crack is even more powerful, because money is never just about survival. It's about status, and status is relative. At $45,000, you compared yourself to people at $60,000. At $80,000, you compare yourself to people at $120,000. Your brain doesn't compare downward, it compares upward. Social psychologists call this upward comparison bias, our tendency to measure ourselves against those slightly ahead of us. It's efficient for motivation, but brutal for contentment. You scroll LinkedIn, your college friend just bought a house, your coworker got promoted to director. Someone your age is making 6 figures working remotely from Bali. You don't feel poor, but you don't feel ahead either. You feel average, and average feels like losing in a world that rewards extraordinary. Here's the uncomfortable truth. $80,000 used to mean I've arrived. Now it often means I'm not struggling, but I'm not secure. There's a difference. Security isn't just paying bills. Security is optionality. Can you quit your job tomorrow? Can you take 6 months off? Can you handle a medical emergency without panic? For many people earning $80,000 in major U.S. cities, the answer is still no. Because inflation, housing costs, healthcare, childcare, they've shifted the baseline of what enough costs. But your brain is still chasing an old milestone, a number that once represented safety. And when you reach it and don't feel safe, you assume the problem is you. It isn't. The number moved, the world changed, and your psychology didn't get the memo. But here's where it gets deeper. The $80,000 salary illusion isn't just economic, it's existential. Because when you tie your sense of progress to a number, and the number doesn't deliver fulfillment, you start to question yourself. The identity trap. There's a moment no one talks about. It's not when you get the raise. It's 6 months later, when nothing feels different. Your mornings feel the same. Your stress feels the same. Your sense of being behind feels almost identical. And that's when a subtle thought creeps in. If I'm making good money, why don't I feel successful? This is where the illusion shifts from financial to psychological. Because money doesn't just buy things, it buys identity. When you were younger, you didn't just want $80,000. You wanted what it represented: competence, respect, stability, proof that you weren't falling behind. You believed income and identity were linked, and in many ways they are. In the United States especially, salary is one of the fastest ways people categorize you. It signals intelligence, discipline, value, even morality in subtle ways. High earners are often seen as driven, low earners, lazy. It's not fair, it's not always true, but culturally the association is deeply embedded. So when you hit 80K, it's not just a number, it's a mirror, and you expect to see someone successful staring back. But here's the problem. Identity expands faster than income. The moment you hit 80K, your brain recalibrates. You're no longer the ambitious underdog trying to climb. Now you're the person who should be ahead. Your expectations upgrade. You think, at this income, I should own a home. At this income, I shouldn't worry about groceries. At this income, I should have investments, travel more, feel settled. You've attached new standards to your new salary. But those standards didn't come from math. They came from narrative, from media, from social circles, from the quiet pressure of being in your late 20s or 30s in America. And that pressure is relentless. Here's the psychological mechanism at play. When we reach a goal, we don't experience lasting satisfaction. We experience goalpost shifting. The brain survives by chasing the next target. This isn't a flaw, it's evolutionary. If early humans felt permanently satisfied after one successful hunt, they wouldn't hunt again. Progress requires dissatisfaction. But in modern life, that same mechanism keeps you in a constant loop. You hit 80K, your brain says, good, now 100K. You hit 100K, it says, good, but housing prices are insane, maybe 150K. There's always another tier, another benchmark, another invisible ladder, and you're always one rung below enough. But here's where it becomes dangerous, because eventually you stop chasing comfort and you start chasing validation. You don't just want to earn more, you want to feel ahead, respected, impressive, safe from judgment. That's why someone earning 80K in Ohio might feel financially fine, and someone earning 120K in New York might feel broke. It's not just cost of living, it's psychological cost of comparison. The more competitive your environment, the more distorted your baseline becomes. And in cities filled with six-figure earners, startup founders, tech employees, and finance professionals, 80K doesn't feel like success. It feels like entry-level adulthood. There's another layer. Security used to mean steady employment and a pension. Now it means investments, side hustles, emergency funds, diversified income streams, personal brands.
The bar for feeling safe has risen dramatically, and most people don't consciously update their definition of enough. They just feel the gap. That gap between what I thought this would feel like and what it actually feels like. That gap is the illusion. But here's the twist. The illusion isn't just about income not being high enough. It's about clarity. Because most people never define what enough actually is. They inherit a number, chase it, reach it, and then feel confused when it doesn't solve the deeper uncertainty. If you don't define enough intentionally, your environment will define it for you, and your environment always raises the bar. Always. So the real question isn't, why doesn't $80,000 feel like enough? The real question is, enough for what? Enough to survive? Enough to save? Enough to retire early? Enough to impress others? Enough to feel secure in your own skin? Until you answer that, no number will feel stable. It will just feel temporary. And that's where the illusion tightens. Because once income becomes tied to identity, you're no longer just earning money, you're chasing worth. And that chase has no ceiling. Because the 80K illusion isn't just personal psychology, it's structural, economic, systemic. And once you see that layer, the feeling of being behind starts to make a lot more sense.
The moving floor. There's a quiet shift that happened over the last 20 years. Not dramatic enough to feel revolutionary, but powerful enough to change how $80,000 actually functions in real life. The shift wasn't just inflation, it was expectation inflation. On paper, $80,000 sounds solid, above the US median individual income, respectable, professional, comfortable. But here's the uncomfortable reality. The cost of stability has risen faster than the symbolism of that number. Housing, healthcare, childcare, insurance, education. These aren't luxuries. They're the modern definition of adulthood. And they've quietly redefined what middle-class comfort actually costs. Imagine two people, one earning $80,000 in 2003, one earning $80,000 today. The first person might have spent 25 to 30% of income on housing. The second might spend 40 to 50%, especially in major metro areas. That difference isn't just math, it's psychological compression. When fixed expenses take up more mental bandwidth, your nervous system doesn't feel abundant. It feels fragile, even if your income is objectively decent. Here's something most people never calculate. Freedom is not determined by income. It's determined by margin. Margin is the gap between what you earn and what you must spend. When that gap is wide, you feel calm. When that gap is thin, you feel pressure. Two people can both earn $80K. One saves $2,000 a month and feels secure. The other saves $200 and feels anxious. Same salary, completely different psychological experience. The illusion isn't just that $80K is too low. It's that the margin is shrinking. And shrinking margin feels like shrinking control. Now add another layer. Debt. Student loans, car payments, credit cards, buy now, pay later subscriptions that feel harmless until they stack. The modern financial system is frictionless, and frictionless systems encourage expansion. You don't feel like you're overspending, you feel like you're managing, but your future income is already allocated. So even if $80K hits your account, it's already spoken for. And money that's already committed doesn't feel like wealth. It feels like obligation. There's also something else happening. The culture shifted from ownership to optimization. It's no longer enough to just earn. You're expected to invest strategically, max out retirement accounts, have a side hustle, build passive income, track net worth, monitor the stock market. Financial awareness is higher than ever, but so is financial pressure. You're not just trying to live,
You're trying to play the game correctly. And when you don't feel ahead in that game, you assume you're falling behind, even if you're objectively stable. This is what I call the moving floor. In the past, financial stress felt like falling below a line. Now, the line keeps rising, so you're constantly running just to stay at baseline. You're not drowning, but you're not floating either. You're treading water. And treading water is exhausting. But here's the most important part. The system isn't designed for you to feel finished. It's designed for you to keep striving. The economy runs on aspiration. Advertising runs on insufficiency. Social media runs on comparison. If you suddenly felt completely secure at 80K, you might stop chasing upgrades. And chasing upgrades is profitable. So culturally, we amplify lifestyles that sit just beyond your reach. The renovated kitchen, the luxury SUV, the international vacations, the early retirement narratives. You're constantly exposed to the next tier, and proximity to the next tier makes your current tier feel small. Not because it is small, but because it's visible. Now pause for a second. Ask yourself, if no one else could see your salary, if there were no LinkedIn titles, no Zillow browsing, no Instagram highlight reels, would 80K still feel insufficient? Or would it simply feel like data? Because that's what it is, a number. The illusion begins when the number becomes a verdict on your intelligence, your discipline, your trajectory, your future. But numbers don't contain meaning. We project meaning onto them, and projections can be rewritten. So here's where we pivot. If the $80,000 salary illusion is built on hedonic adaptation, upward comparison, shrinking margin, cultural pressure, then breaking the illusion requires something different, not necessarily earning more, but redefining what ahead means. Because without that redefinition, 100K won't feel different. 150K won't feel different. The treadmill just speeds up.
There's a moment in every financial journey that doesn't get posted online. It's quiet. It's internal. It's when you realize the number you were chasing was never supposed to make you feel secure. It was supposed to keep you moving. The system rewards movement, but your nervous system rewards stability. And if you never consciously choose which one you're optimizing for, you'll default to movement forever. Here's the shift. Instead of asking, how do I make more? Ask, what would make me feel structurally safe? Not socially impressive, not externally validated, structurally safe. That means defining how much monthly margin actually calms you. How many months of expenses equal peace of mind? What kind of lifestyle genuinely improves your life, and what's just signaling? Because without that clarity, income becomes an emotional roller coaster. Up feels good briefly, flat feels like failure, and down feels catastrophic. Let's make this practical. Imagine two versions of success. Version A, you earn $120,000. You upgrade everything. Your fixed costs expand. You save a little more than before. You feel slightly ahead, slightly tense. Version B, you earn $80,000. You intentionally cap lifestyle expansion. You build margin. You create optionality. You know exactly what enough means for you. One of those is higher status. The other is higher control. Control feels boring on social media, but in real life it feels powerful. There's a concept in psychology called self-determination theory, the idea that humans thrive when they feel autonomy, competence, and connection. Notice what's missing. There's no mention of salary. Income can support autonomy, but it doesn't automatically create it. Autonomy comes from options, and options come from margin. This is why someone making 80K with low expenses and high clarity can feel calmer than someone making 150K chained to obligations. It's not the number, it's the leverage. Now, this isn't an anti-ambition message. Ambition is powerful. Growth is good. Increasing income can absolutely improve your life. But if you attach your identity to each new tier, you'll keep moving the finish line. And when the finish line keeps moving, you never arrive. The illusion isn't that 80K is too low. The illusion is that any number will permanently solve uncertainty. Uncertainty is part of being human. Money can reduce it, but it can't eliminate it. So here's the deeper question. What are you actually trying to feel? Is it security? Respect? Freedom? Proof? Once you name that emotion, you can design for it intentionally. Maybe that means increasing income strategically. Maybe it means reducing fixed costs. Maybe it means changing cities. Maybe it means redefining who you're comparing yourself to. Because comparison is optional. It feels automatic, but it's not mandatory. And here's the truth most people don't admit. You don't feel behind because you make $80,000. You feel behind because the world constantly shows you the next tier, and your brain interprets visibility as proximity. Just because you can see the lifestyle doesn't mean you're supposed to be living it right now. The goal isn't to stop wanting more. It's to stop outsourcing your definition of enough. When you define enough clearly, income becomes a tool. Without that definition, income becomes a treadmill, and treadmills are designed to keep you running. If this shifted how you see your own number, whether it's 50K, 80K, or 150K, take a second and sit with it. And if you want more conversations like this, thoughtful, psychology-driven breakdowns about money, ambition, and the systems shaping how we think, you can subscribe. But more importantly, reflect on this. What does enough actually look like for you? Not for your coworkers, not for social media, not for the version of you that's trying to impress anyone. For you. Because once that's clear, the illusion loses its power.